what happened in 2020? We had COVID. Our government thought that the solution to COVID was to just print a whole bunch of money and hand it out to everybody. Because what they had done was created fear in the marketplace. They're shutting people down. They're quarantining everybody. And businesses are shut down. They're telling people to stay in their house. And people are like, we can't live. The electric bill is still due. The car note is still due. My light bill is still due. The bank is telling me I still got to make my mortgage payment, but you're not letting me go to work to earn the income to pay that. And I think it kind of shocked the government a little bit to recognize how many Americans are living literally paycheck to paycheck.
If you think wealth is about luxury cars, designer jewelry, or exotic vacations, you're in the wrong place. We're not concerned about your net worth, your 401k, or how much debt you have. Our approach is much different because real wealth isn't only about money. It's about freedom. Freedom to work because you want to, not because you have to. Freedom to pursue your purpose, live on passive income, and build a legacy. That freedom starts now. Welcome to the Real Wealth Formula with Brad Hovis, where each episode breaks down the principles, mindset, and practical steps to help you experience financial freedom today. Real talk, real numbers, real freedom. This is the Real Wealth Formula.
What's up, moguls? Welcome to the Real Wealth Formula. Today's episode is doing something I don't usually do, which is try to predict the future. It's about what the real estate market is going to do for the rest of 2025. But first, this episode is brought to you by Rebiz.com. Rebiz acquires highly profitable real estate deals across the country in multiple local markets and have built a deal flow engine that just keeps delivering opportunities. The problem, they don't have the bandwidth to handle them all. So they're looking for business partners who want to run their own scalable real estate business part-time while they provide the deal flow, system, and support. They're hosting a free Discovery Week workshop that walks through the unique fund, find, fix, and finance system that has produced over 500 deals worth over $86 million. It's a proven, no-cost opportunity for people to see if plugging into this unique business system makes sense. Watch a short video at Rebiz.com, that's REIBIZ.com, that goes over case studies, income opportunities, and real estate strategies in greater detail. Now, what is the real estate market going to be doing over the next several months here in 2025? The answer is, I don't really know, but I have a guess. This podcast is likely coming out right around fall time. And so I'm going to be projecting what I think the fall and the winter is going to be. So it's going to be more than just 2025. We're also going to leak into 26. And all I can tell you is my analysis. Now, the way I do my market analysis for this exact topic is I do look at some data, but I look at more what's actually going on in the real estate market because I'm in the trenches. Like, we're actually talking to realtors. We're actually talking to wholesalers. We're actually trying to put properties under contract. We get it, okay? And so I want to take one little step back before I answer the question about what I think 2025 and early part of 26 is going to look like. And I may produce this episode and look like a complete fool. I have been fooled in the past. And in fact, I was fooled in 2020. All the indicators that I saw in 2018 and 2019 seemed to think, hey, we're going in a downward trajectory. And then what happened? COVID hit. And then what happened? We printed a bunch of money. And then what happened? The real estate market went nuts. Now, I'm glad that I was holding a bunch of real estate. Like, I had sold in Colorado in 18 and 19, took that money and went and I'm glad I didn't stick it under my mattress. I know some guys who did, who literally said, man, it's going nuts right now, 18, 19, the market is going crazy. Let me pull my money out of the stock market or whatever it is, stick it under my mattress and wait for an amazing opportunity. Glad I didn't do that. Instead, what I did was I took that money and put it into other markets, San Antonio, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, St. Louis, Missouri. I also bought a software company. I paid off some debt. I did a bunch of stuff with my exit here in Denver. I'm glad I got back into real estate because what happened in 2020? We had COVID. The solution to the problem, our government thought that the solution to COVID was to just print a whole bunch of money and hand it out to everybody. Because what they had done was created fear in the marketplace. They're shutting people down. They're quarantining everybody. And businesses are shut down. They're telling people to stay in their house. And people are like, we can't live. the electric bill is still due. The car note is still due. My light bill is still due. The bank is telling me I still got to make my mortgage payment, but you're not letting me go to work to earn the income to pay that. And I think it kind of shocked the government a little bit to recognize how many Americans are living literally paycheck to paycheck. Like the idea of, hey, stay in your house for a week was like a financial crisis to many people. Like, hey, just don't work for a week. Many could not survive that. And then they said 2 weeks, 14 days to cover this, reduce the spread or whatever, to stop the spread. People were freaking out at 7 days. Now you tell them it's going to be 2 weeks. How are they going to survive? And of course, we know that 2 weeks turned into other things. And then they printed money and they came out with, giving everybody $600 or whatever it is. And the PPP loan came out so that business owners could go get loans to pay employees and keep the economy going. And the net of it all is they printed $7 trillion. And what did some people do with that? Some people kept their business going and paid their employees. Some people took that money and bought real estate. They bought boats, they bought RVs, they bought fifth wheels, they did a bunch of stuff, but they couldn't vacation because everything is shut down. So instead they said, let's go buy real estate. And so my business in 2020 actually did pretty well because we're on the front edge of this whole thing. And, we buy and sell and my holdings went up from 2020 even up until this year, 2025. So my real estate holdings went up. The deal volume went up. Like we were selling, the hedge funds were buying everything. So we were wholesaling deals to the hedge funds, the deals that we just didn't want or didn't think we could make good money on. The hedge funds bought all that stuff. Well, now what's happened? Some of the hedge funds have literally gone out of business. I predicted that. You can go back and see, I said, they're paying way too much. Like we thought that they were paying way too much in 2015 and 16 when they started entering in the foreclosure markets here in Colorado. And that's when the foreclosure markets pretty much dried up. So in Colorado, the hedge funds came in, started overbidding everything. And us mom and pop real estate shops were just struggling. And so it didn't make a ton of sense to continue to do real estate deals from the foreclosure auction. So we came with alternative methods. And that's where a lot of guys started getting into, marketing and direct mail. And so the software business that I got into is helping those active investors try to find deals using, marketing channels. Well, I thought that in 2019 we'd see a crash, that I was super smart on buying at the top and exiting a big market. And then what happened? We printed a bunch of money. They started buying more real estate. What happens when you start buying real estate? The prices go up, and I looked foolish here in Denver. So what I'm attempting to predict might make me look a little foolish. But again, I want to take another step back and talk to you about the cyclical nature of real estate in general. So the prime time historically to sell houses is in the springtime. So think, April, May, June, March, April, May, June, that kind of thing. Why? Why is that a great time? Well, you're about to wrap up school. This is what families think of, particularly single family houses. You're about to wrap up the school. You're thinking about if you're going to another place, the next school that little Johnny is going to get into. So it'd be really nice to kind of buy a house, close on it, move in, in the summertime, still go on your vacations, but make sure that you're all settled before the next school year starts. So people start looking in the spring. Also, nobody wants to move in the winter, particularly if you're in like a northern. Moving in Colorado in January, you're freezing your butt off. It could be a snowstorm. You got, do you really want to move? No, let's just kind of settle down until the weather turns. But a couple of those things, like historically, in any market, go to any sold data, you will see that houses sell for higher in the springtime than they do in the wintertime. That's pretty common. In fact, it kind of has a up and down, roller coaster type feel. That chart looks like that. Generally going in an upward direction over time, but from a seasonal perspective, springtime is a good time to list your house so you can kind of sell it in the late spring, middle of summertime. So there's a buying season of about, let's call it about, 4, 5, 6 months, something like that. A selling season, I should say, from like March to September. Then once you start getting into October, it gets more difficult to sell a house. This is coming from a fix and flip perspective. In October, it is more difficult to sell a house than it is in April. It's just the facts. Why? Kids are already in school. People going into the school district that they want, and therefore living in the neighborhood that it's zoned for that school district, is really important. They're not going to then up and move just because they like a different house. They're going to sit put for a little while. Well, in October, pretty much the only people, the market is now not as flooded. The only people who are looking to buy in October, November, December are people who are like having to move in during that time. Maybe they got a job transfer and the job said, hey, we want you out there starting October, November. So they're having to move. It also could be potentially single people who don't have kids, who the school system doesn't really care. So you do have a little bit of a market still in October and November before the weather starts to turn. But once it gets cold and frigid, particularly in markets like Denver and other northern, colder markets, but even Tennessee doesn't get a ton of snow. When it does, they get a half an inch of snow, they shut the whole town down. Even in Tennessee and Memphis, they don't want to move in December and January. So it is harder to lease up houses in the wintertime, and it's harder to sell them in the wintertime. That's just a fact. So now that you have that concept or that content, I'm going to tell you what I think the real estate market in 2020, the rest of 25 and into 26 is going to do. But first, we're going to pause from a word from our sponsors. PropStream is the most comprehensive and AI-enhanced real estate data provider nationwide. We equip real estate professionals with powerful tools and marketing solutions, helping them make informed decisions and find top leads faster. Visit realwealthformula.com/sponsors for a special link to get a free trial and a ton of goodies only for you, Real Wealth Formula moguls. Okay, so before the break, I was talking about, the seasonal nature of real estate and how it's easier and better to sell in the spring and summertime than it is in the wintertime. I then also told you what I think the rest of 2025 is going to look like and into 26. There's a unique thing that happened in 2025, and that was President Trump became our president again. And he came in with an agenda, some would call it a mandate, that he's going to prioritize certain things. And one of those major things he's prioritizing is illegal immigration. People living in this country without having proper documentation, without being a proper citizen. And so he has really cracked down on that. He's talking about, hey, from a political perspective, he's saying things on the on the TV and the announcements that they're making from the press room, things like, oh, we're only going after the hardened criminals, the people who are stealing, robbing, murdering, raping, we're only going after those types of people. And some people believe that. What I've seen in the markets that we deal with, particularly in San Antonio, is they're kind of going after anyone who's undocumented. Like there are ICE raids going on construction zones, construction projects, where they just show up and then all of a sudden they're taking people into custody and deporting them, taking them back to whatever country they came from. And so this has become a real issue on a few things. And I'm just going to be really honest. Number one, markets like San Antonio, if you in the summer of 2025 looked at the market of San Antonio and saw just how many houses were for sale, it would be shocking. I mean, the amount of for sale has gone through the roof. The other thing that has happened, if you remember back in 22 and even 21, 22, 23, people used to list their house on the market. That's back when rates were lower, 3, 4, 5%. And what they would, they list the house on the market and people would come in with what they called appraisal gaps. They were so clamoring for houses that they would come in and say, oh, you want $300,000 for it? We'll give you $50,000 over whatever it appraises for. So if it appraises for $300,000, they're paying $350,000. And they're battling with appraisal gaps, and there is no inspection contingencies, and you're taking it as is, how is, where is. And that was a crazy time. Why? Because all of these people had a ton of money. I got a ton of money because I was able to run my business still. I took the PPP loan. And so instead of me having to pay for my payroll, The government was paying my payroll for me. So I'm like, great, we're still doing business. We're still making money. If the government wants to pay for that, great, wonderful, I'll take it. And many Americans did the exact same thing. And so you had a lot of people who were using that money to go buy second and third homes. The other part to this was in those times, you put something on the market and it was going right away. What has happened in the summer and spring even of 2025? The days on market are way larger than we have actually seen in probably a decade. Like when you think about 2015, we're way out of the 2008 recession and we're way out of, those kind of issues. There's a heavy demand for housing. There's more buyers who want to buy and not enough houses to sell. And so for a long ride, it's been a seller's market. I mean, asking whatever they want and pretty much getting it. That has changed in the summer of 2025. Sellers are not getting what they want. In fact, I'm meeting somebody here in the studio pretty soon. He's got several units in Lafayette here in town. They're offering a rate pay downs where they'll say, hey, we'll give you some money towards paying down the rate. Because also what has happened, not just the immigration situation. Let me finish my immigration thought and then I'll get to the rate thought in just a second. So San Antonio, you have amazing houses that literally right now have just been abandoned. Great looking houses that it looks like people have just up and left, cleaned it out. Because I'm going to explain something in my opinion of the Hispanic community. They are very respectful, very hardworking. I don't have hardly any problems with my Hispanic tenants, tenant buyers, contractors. I don't have any problem. But what we know is some in that community, let's just be real, some in that community are not documented. They're here as the word illegal aliens or undocumented, whatever PC word you want to use. They haven't received their American citizenship. And so when Trump's coming in with ICE doing these raids, there's some people who just said, we don't want the headache. We don't want to go to jail. We're just going to up and go back to the country. And I really see Main Street, people in that exact situation, houses that we talked to other landlords and go, yeah, they were great. And then they up and left out of the middle of nowhere by the hundreds and thousands, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds and thousands. And so what do you have? You have a influx of inventory in certain markets. And in fact, I would even say most markets, because another key factor is labor and material have gone up. The cost to do construction have gone up slightly, not a ton, but slightly. Why? Well, because if you had undocumented people doing construction for you, you can literally pay them less. Some pay them under the table. We don't. We're above board with everything. Everybody gets an I-9, I think it's called a W-9, and then we send them a 1099 at the end of the year. We make sure that from a tax perspective, we're in good shape, right? I'm a private equity company. I got to be compliant with the SEC. I got to make sure that we're doing things the right way. But other mom and pop real estate investors don't do it that way. They're just paying cash under the table. And what are those undocumented people doing? They're just paying cash for the goods and services they need to live. Well, imagine a percentage, and I don't have a percentage, of the workforce just leaving and going back to the country that they're a citizen of. Well, now there's less competition. There's higher demand for construction projects. That means that the construction is going to go up. And that's exactly what I've seen happen. So not only am I seeing a lot of houses now flooding the market, oddly, I'm also seeing construction kind of go up, which makes it so that it indicates to me that the whole illegal alien, undocumented citizen, whatever you want to call it, I'm trying to avoid the PC route, though I actually don't care about PC. So people who are here illegally, the people who are here illegally are going back to their country, and therefore it's causing more inventory and it's causing construction prices to go up. So now the third thing. So there's three things that I want to get at. One was illegals leaving. Number two, construction costs have gone up because of that. And inflation hasn't gone up. It's been the labor side that has really gone up. The materials really haven't gone up. Years ago, we used to have a wood shortage. And so all of a sudden lumber went from like, hey, this 2x4 is $2. Now it's $10. That's not the case anymore. that wood costs have come back down, not quite to where they were before, but they've come back down way before what it was like years ago. And so I just know that I track this stuff in my business, and construction has cost us more. The third thing that I think is going to affect housing prices is the fact that Powell is dead set. Powell is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And he's the one who basically sets the interest rates. Well, one of the strategies that the government used a couple of years ago to slow down the inflation situation, the Biden administration said, hey, we got to slow down the inflation. Things are becoming way too expensive. One of the things that they did was they hiked the interest rates way high. They were 3%, 4%, and 5%. And instead of slowly increasing them, they increased them, I think, towards the end of 2023, which, by the way, was really smart for me because I sold my hotel in the beginning of 2023. And that hotel had a loan on it that was an adjustable rate that would have been come due like last year or this year. And I sold my hotel so that I could avoid that scenario. And what happened? The rates went up. They didn't go just up. They went up quickly. In fact, in my opinion, way too quickly. Kind of paused everybody. So now there's people who have 3%, 4%, and 5% interest rates, but the rates now are 7% and 8%. Like, particularly if you're an investor, like they're talking about 7.9%. Well, that's 8% in my book. The rates went from 4% to 7%, like that, almost 7 or 8%, almost doubling within a very short period of time. So now what do you have? You have a whole bunch of people who normally would have already moved because they've got a 3% interest rate, 3.5% interest rate. They're not going anywhere. Why? They may hate the house but love the loan. That's a phrase you're hearing right now. Because they know if they go buy another house, they're not going to have that 3% loan. They're going to have that 7% loan, which is going to increase their payment, which is likely going to be more than they're paying right now, and for a similar house. So they say, no, it makes no sense to move. We're just going to stay here and deal with it, basically. And so what has happened? The market is kind of stalled. And that's by design. That's what the government wanted. Now, what Trump keeps asking for is for Powell to lower the rates. And Powell a couple weeks ago came up and said, we are not lowering the rates. We are absolutely not lowering the rates. So what did that do? The stock market liked that. The housing market didn't. So you have days on market, which means when the house gets listed, how long is it going to stay on the market? That's what days on market means, before it sells. And when you're in a hot market, the days on market is like nothing, 30 days, right? PropStream is the most comprehensive and AI-enhanced real estate data provider nationwide. We equip real estate professionals with powerful tools and marketing solutions, helping them make informed decisions and find top leads faster. Visit realwealthformula.com/sponsors for a special link to get a free trial and a ton of goodies only for you, Real Wealth Formula moguls. We're seeing now, and that we haven't seen in a long time, houses that have been, and by the way, days on market doesn't mean, in the comments, let me know. I believe days on market is we listed it on Monday, and when we took it off the market, meaning it got under contract, if we got it under contract on Wednesday, that means it had 2 days on market. I think that's what that means. I don't think it means that it's actually sold and closed. It could be. Regardless, however that days on market gets calculated, what we're seeing is houses that normally would have sold, and I care about sold within 30 and 45 days, which is the typical in a hot market. That's pretty typical for banks to be able to go get loans and do the underwriting and process. Selling a house in 30 to 45 days is pretty normal. We're now seeing houses that would have sold for 30 to 45 days being on the market and unsold for 90, 120 days. People who listed their house in the springtime went all summer and have not sold it. And now what if you're seeing the list price drop? They went at 400, now they're at 480, now they're at 460. Well, if you think about that, that's a 10% drop. And we haven't even gotten into the wintertime. This is still, end of summer, beginning of fall type stuff. We're not in November, December. We're not in January. So what do I think the market is going to do in the rest of 2025? I'm going to caveat that and say, I think that the real estate market across the country, before it gets to March or the springtime of 2026, is going to have a 10 to 20%, the solds, a 10 to 20% correction. Maybe in some markets, even up to 30%. I don't think we're going to see like what we saw in 2008. And I don't think what we saw in that crash time where markets, like every market went down 30% and some went down 50 and 70%. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I do think that we're going to see between a 10 and 20% national correction, and in some markets up to 30%. Why? Because they're already doing it. It's already happening. Literally right now in the single family residential world right now. I also have not talked about the commercial world. I'll talk about that on a different podcast. But in the commercial world, or in the residential world, houses are just not selling. And why aren't they selling? So now let's think about, why aren't they selling? The rates are still too high. People can't afford to make the monthly payment because wages haven't gone up. Wages haven't gone up. The interest rate is still too high. Though they want to buy the house, now they can't. This is why Trump knows if they will just lower the rate, if they lowered the rate from 7.5% to 5.5%, the real estate market would take off again and more deals would be being done. But in the wintertime, I feel like there's going to be a correction. I think it's going to be a buy opportunity. Frankly, I always think that it's time to buy, not because I'm buying retail houses. It's not always time to buy a retail house as an investor. For your primary, yes. If you're going to buy a house that you can live in for a long time, it's your forever house, buy it. Pay for whatever it is because you're going to make it up over time, right? Like I bought my house in 2014 that I sold actually this year for $800,000. At the time, that was retail, close to retail. Now I'd negotiated an owner carry situation and we can kind of get into that at some point, but $800,000 was about what it was worth. I sold it this year for 1.8. So I made money over long term because, hey, I didn't think I was ever going to move out of the house. We wound up moving out though. I wound up moving out. But the issue that we're dealing with here is the rates are not coming down. The interest rate is still the same. The payment is going to be higher than what most people can pay right now. The people who have the 3 and 4% aren't selling. And so we're stuck. So what has to happen? What has to give? If the rates won't go down, then the only thing that can go down is the price. And as we've seen over the last, several months in the spring and the summertime, though they're lowering prices even right now, they're not moving. The houses are just not selling. Now, there's some markets that it's going well, and if you have a brand new house and all kind of stuff, but if you're dealing with an older house that is slightly dated or whatever, we're picking those things up for pennies on the dollar in every market. So if you're wanting to hop into real estate investing, my suggestion is hop in right now, learn, because it's going to take you months and months and months just to learn this stuff. Then once it comes wintertime, now you can kind of get in there and start clipping these deals because I believe that we're going to see a 10 to 20% correction. It'll be the best discount that we've seen in a long time. And I said, we'll know by October. We'll know by October what's going on here, okay? Because if days on market still get into that 90, 120, 150, even 180 day, like think about that. Someone in October who tried to sell their house 6 months prior in April, they're still sitting on it. They've got that listing agreement for 6 months. That's going to be a problem. That's a major problem. That's a sign to say, hey, there's less people in the country because they've either left or been deported. The interest rates haven't changed. Therefore, the only people who want to buy are people who have to buy. But the ones who have to or want to sell, in order to sell, they're going to have to lower their price, something that they haven't done in over a decade. And we're seeing it right now in 2025. Now, what should be the caution for this? Because people get fearful at the top of a market. Here's the deal. I don't know what the top of the market is. Are we at the top of the market right now? Were we at the top of the market 6 months ago? I don't know. Hindsight is 2020. All I know is if you buy a house as an investor that then cash flows, it will likely always cash flow because rents pretty much on single family houses stay the same. They go up like a stair step, right? They stay the same and then they jump up. They stay the same and then they jump up. If you can cash flow that house right now, you should and will be able to cash flow it in the future. So keep buying those cash flowing houses. Now, if you're fixing and flipping, you better be in and out. You better buy it at a discount, get it fixed up and get it listed very quickly. And in the right neighborhood, you need to be more selective as a fix and flipper right now. Wholesalers, who cares? Get it on a contract, flip it. That's why we like wholesaling. Now, there is a major opportunity. I want you to think about this major opportunity I'm about to tell you. There's a major opportunity. This is why some of the gurus are promoting it. It's called subject to, where you're buying the property subject to the existing financing. I'm going to put that into a category of creative finance because it could be sub to, it could be sandwich lease options, it could be wraps, it could be installment land contracts. If you don't know any of those concepts, I literally teach for free for a whole week those concepts and then how to go make money on them, trying to see if anybody wants to operate my business with me and partner with me to do deals. I literally do a whole week for free. Reach out and we'll, click the links below and the registration links and all that kind of stuff. And come on out. People who partner with me, how we do deals together, can capitalize on it. So I highly suggest you hop at it. It's totally free. You have nothing to lose. Take a week off work, travel out here, sit in my training room and learn what it is that we're doing. Now, what happens if the market starts to fall? This is when investors get fearful. And what did Buffett tell us? Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful. The analogy is people don't want to try to catch a falling knife. Like if the market is going down, when do you catch it? Do you wait till it gets to the bottom? Well, when do you know it's the bottom? Nobody knows when it's the bottom. And so my modus operandi is, if you're holding for long term, it doesn't matter so long as it cash flows. If you're flipping, you got to be much more selective and recognize you may be holding that thing for a while. Okay. If you're building, oh my gosh, the guy I'm meeting with, he's a builder. He built these houses, trying to sell the townhouses, row houses, whatever, trying to sell them. He can't sell them, literally can't sell them. And so he's trying to he's trying to incentivize people by lowering the interest rates, but still keeping the same purchase price, right? He's coming here to ask some advice, and my advice is going to be, hey, buddy, lower the rate and the price. In fact, if it were me, I would be holding that note long-term so I can make money on the interest long-term. That's a private finance strategy you guys know I like. So my application is, I think that by the end of 25 and 26, we're going to see between a 10 and 20% national house decline, a value decline, a sell price decline that will get corrected once the rates come down. And here's what I understand. I think Trump is the one who appoints Powell with the Fed. Powell's term is up, I believe, in April of 26. And Trump's going to find somebody who is going to lower the rates. In fact, some stock guys go, hey, once Trump just announces who the next person is going to be, and we know there's going to be, the stock market will analyze that and account for it. Well, that's fine for the stock market, but us real estate guys are sitting there saying, hey, what is this going to look like? How does it actually affect real lives and real values of real estate? So I don't think it's going to be a long-term thing. I think it's going to be a very short-term thing. You may have a small window of opportunity here, because now if the rates come down and all the people who were on the sidelines for years, see, the people on the sidelines, the prime buying age is like that 30-year-old. Well, they've been on the sidelines. They, number one, they don't want to overpay for houses. They saw what their parents went through in 2008. They don't want to do that anymore. So they're just not going to get into houses and over leverage themselves. This is not going to happen. And so now that there's some more inventory, there's some pressure off of that from a supply and demand perspective. We've got the immigration leaving. So now we have more inventory. But even that is not getting them off the snide. What's going to get them off the snide is those interest rates. And if those go down in April of 26, I think you're going to get back to a more level buying market. But this is just some dude in a podcast studio pontificating. I have been wrong before. And anyone who says that they can predict the future is a liar. The only one I know who can predict the future is the Lord himself. And he's told us a lot about what's happening in the future. Not about the real estate market, but a lot about the future of this world and the world to come. So that's my 2 cents. Hope that answers the question as what I think the real estate market is going to do in 2025 and also in the the spring of 2020, the winter of 2026 and the spring of 2026. Sorry. Hope that answers that question about what I think is going to happen in the near future related to the real estate market. But what I want to say is thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I will catch you on the next episode. If something we said hit home for you, drop it in the comments. I read every single one.
Thanks for tuning in to The Real Wealth Formula, hosted by Brad Hovis. If this episode helped you see money and purpose a little differently, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Share with someone who's ready to build real wealth. And keep building the life, purpose, and freedom you were made for. Until next time, keep your goals clear and your wealth real.